She wore a faded gray hoodie and worn-out sneakers, looking like she barely had 2 nickels to rub together. To the flight crew of Flight 402 to London, Jordan Maxwell was just an inconvenience, a space filler in first class who clearly didn't belong. They sneered, they ignored her, and they threatened to drag her off the plane for simply sitting in the seat she paid for. They didn't know that the phone in her pocket was connected directly to the board of directors. They didn't know that with a single signature, she could ground the entire fleet. By the time the wheels touched the tarmac, they would wish they had treated this nobody like the queen she actually was. This is the story of the ultimate regret. The automatic sliding doors of JFK Terminal 4 parted with a hiss, admitting a gust of biting November wind and Jordan Maxwell. Jordan pulled the hood of her oversized, charcoal gray sweatshirt tighter around her face. She was tired. It had been a grueling 3-week negotiation in Tokyo, followed by a red-eye to New York, and now, finally, the last leg home to London. She didn't look like a woman who had just closed a $4.2 billion acquisition of Skyline Aviation's parent company, Aether Holdings. She looked like a tired graduate student running on caffeine and instant noodles. That was by design. Jordan valued comfort over couture, especially when she was traveling. She adjusted her backpack, which contained a laptop worth more than most cars, and approached the priority check-in counter for Skyline Aviation. The red carpet lane was empty. The economy lines, however, were snaking back toward the entrance, a chaotic river of frustrated travelers. Jordan stepped onto the red carpet, exhaling a sigh of relief. "Excuse me," a sharp voice cut through the air. Jordan stopped and looked up. A blonde gate agent, whose name tag read Tiffany, was leaning over the counter, her manicured finger pointing aggressively toward the economy lines. "The line starts back there," Tiffany snapped, not even making eye contact as she shuffled papers. "This is for first class and Diamond Medallion members only." "I know," Jordan said, her voice calm, raspy from lack of sleep. She took another step forward. "I'm checking in for Flight 402. Tiffany finally looked up. Her eyes scanned Jordan from the scuffed toes of her sneakers to the messy bun atop her head. The sneer was instant and visceral. It was the look of someone smelling spoiled milk. "Ma'am," Tiffany said, slowing her speech as if talking to a toddler. "Priority is for paying first-class customers. Please go to the self-service kiosks in the main hall if you have an economy ticket. I'm calling security if you don't move." Jordan blinked. She didn't have the energy for this. She reached into her pocket and pulled out her passport and phone. "I am in first class. My name is Jordan Maxwell." Tiffany let out a short, incredulous laugh. She didn't take the passport. "Look, honey, upgrading yourself in your head doesn't count. We have real VIPs coming through here in 10 minutes, mister. Preston Holloway is on this flight, and I don't have time to play games with someone trying to sneak a free bag check. Move." The air around Jordan seemed to drop a few degrees. She placed her passport on the high counter with a deliberate, heavy thud. "Scan it," Jordan said. The rasp was gone, replaced by a tone of steel that usually made boardroom executives sweat. Tiffany rolled her eyes, grabbed the passport with exaggerated annoyance, and slammed it onto the scanner. She typed furiously on her keyboard, ready to read out the economy seat assignment and humiliate this intruder. The screen beeped. Tiffany's fingers froze. Passenger. Maxwell, Jordan. Status. Invitation only. Chairman's circle. Seat. 1A. The computer screen flashed a distinct gold border that Tiffany had only seen in training manuals from 10 years ago. It was a clearance level higher than Diamond. It was higher than Global Services. It was a status that didn't technically exist for the public. Tiffany's mouth opened, then closed. She looked at the screen, then back at Jordan's hoodie. Her brain couldn't reconcile the data. It had to be a glitch. Or fraud. Definitely fraud. "System error," Tiffany muttered, her face flushing pink. She reset the screen. "You must have hacked a loyalty number or something. There is no way." "Is there a problem, Tiffany?" A tall man in a sharp navy suit walked up behind the counter. It was the shift supervisor, Gary. "She's holding up the line, Gary," Tiffany said, dropping her voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Her ticket is flagging as Chairman's Circle. Obviously a glitch. Look at her." Gary glanced at Jordan. He saw a black woman in a hoodie. He saw the lack of designer luggage. He made the same calculation Tiffany did. "Ma'am," Gary said, putting on his best customer service with a threat smile, We're going to need you to step aside while we verify the authenticity of this ticket. Federal fraud regarding airline tickets is a serious offense. Jordan stared at him. You're going to verify a ticket issued by your own corporate office? We're going to verify how you got it, Gary corrected, stepping out from behind the counter. Please step aside. Mr. Holloway is arriving, and we need this lane clear for legitimate, high-value clients. Jordan felt the vibration of her phone in her hand. It was a text from Richard Sterling, the former CEO of Skyline, now reporting to her. Have a safe flight, Jay. The team is ready for the handover meeting in London. She could have called Richard right then. She could have handed the phone to Gary. But a cold curiosity settled in her chest. She wanted to see how deep the rot went. She wanted to see exactly how they treated people they thought were nobodies. Fine, Jordan said, stepping out of the red carpet lane and leaning against a concrete pillar. Verify away. But do it fast. I'm not missing my flight. Gary smirked. We'll see about that. 10 minutes passed. Jordan watched as Gary and Tiffany made frantic phone calls, whispering and pointing at her. While they wasted time, the automatic doors parted again. A limousine had pulled up curbside. Out stepped a man who looked like he had been manufactured in a factory for arrogant venture capitalists. He wore a beige cashmere coat, Italian loafers, and sunglasses indoors. He was followed by an assistant struggling with 3 Louis Vuitton trunks. This was Preston Holloway. Tiffany's face transformed instantly. The scowl vanished, replaced by a beaming, terrified reverence. Mr. Holloway, she chirped, practically leaping over the counter. Welcome back. We have everything ready for you. Preston didn't stop walking. He didn't even look at her. He just held out his ID without breaking stride. Make it quick. I need a drink. And make sure the cabin is empty before I board. I hate the shuffling of the cattle. Of course, sir. Absolutely, Gary said, bowing his head. We have a slight technical delay with the manifest due to a security flag. He gestured vaguely toward Jordan, but we are clearing it now. Preston turned his head, his sunglasses sliding down his nose. He looked at Jordan leaning against the pillar. He scoffed, a sound wet with derision. Is that the security risk? Preston asked, loud enough for half the terminal to hear. She looks like she's here to clean the bathrooms, not fly. Gary chuckled nervously. We're handling it, Mr. Holloway. Jordan pushed off the pillar. She walked straight up to Preston. She was shorter than him, but she held herself with a density of presence that made the air heavy. Careful, Jordan said softly. Appearances can be deceiving. Preston laughed, turning his back on her. Gary, get this trash out of my sight. It's ruining the ambiance. Gary turned to Jordan, his face hard. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to wait with security. You are disturbing our VIPs. Just then, the printer behind the counter whirred to life. It spat out a long boarding pass, then another, then a baggage tag with a thick, gold stripe. The computer screen flashed green. Validation confirmed. Tiffany stared at the screen. She hit the keys. Nothing changed. The system was ironclad. The ticket was valid. Not just valid, it was coded with a priority override that prevented her from changing the seat. Gary, Tiffany whispered. It cleared. Corporate cleared it. Gary looked at the screen, his jaw tightening. He couldn't deny her boarding now without a lawsuit, but he didn't have to be nice about it. He snatched the boarding pass from the printer. He walked over to Jordan and shoved it into her hand, avoiding her gaze. Boarding starts in 40 minutes. Gate B12. Don't cause trouble, or we will remove you. No apology, no acknowledgement of the error, just a threat. Jordan took the ticket. See you on board, Gary. She walked toward security, leaving Preston Holloway frowning at the check-in desk. Why does she have a ticket? Preston demanded. System glitch, sir, Tiffany lied smoothly. Don't worry, I've messaged the flight crew. They'll make sure she knows her place. The interior of the Boeing 777 was bathed in soft blue mood lighting. The first-class cabin was an enclave of luxury private pods, lie-flat beds, and champagne on ice. Jordan was the first to board. She found her seat, 1A, the prime spot on the aircraft. She stowed her backpack, kicked off her sneakers, and sat down, pulling out a thick file of documents marked confidential. She just wanted to work and sleep. She had barely opened the folder when the heavy thud of footsteps vibrated the floor. Excuse me? Jordan looked up. A flight attendant stood over her. Her name tag read, Karena. She was in her late 40s, with hair sprayed into a helmet of perfection, and a smile that didn't reach her cold, hard eyes. "Yes?" Jordan asked. "I think you're confused," Karenna said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "This is seat 1A. "I know," Jordan said. "It's on my boarding pass. May I see it?" Karenna didn't wait. She plucked the pass from Jordan's hand. She scrutinized it, holding it up to the light as if looking for a watermark. She frowned. "Well, the machine might have printed this, but there's clearly a mistake with the seating chart," Karenna said. "We hold 1A for our established frequent flyers. I'm going to need you to move to 4D. It's the middle aisle seat in the back of the cabin." Jordan took the pass back. "I reserved 1A specifically. I have work to do, and I need the window privacy. I'm not moving." Karenna's smile vanished. She leaned in, placing a hand on Jordan's arm, lest an invasion of space. "Listen to me," Karenna hissed. "Mr. Preston Holloway always sits in 1A. He is a platinum key holder. He is worth millions to this airline. Well, I don't know how you got this ticket, maybe a sweepstakes or an employee pass from a cousin, but you do not dictate terms here. Move. Now." "No," Jordan said simply. She opened her file again. Karenna turned red. She stood up straight and pressed the intercom button on the wall. "Captain, we have a situation in the forward cabin. A passenger is refusing crew instructions." A moment later, Preston Holloway boarded. He stopped dead when he saw Jordan in the seat. "You have got to be joking," Preston groaned, throwing his hands up. "Karenna, why is the help sitting in my seat?" "I'm trying to remove her, Mr. Holloway," Karenna said, looking panicked. "She's being non-compliant." Preston stepped forward, looming over Jordan. "Hey, sweetheart, you're in the wrong tax bracket for this seat. Get up. I'll give you $500. That's probably rent for you." Jordan slowly closed the file. She looked at Preston, then at Karenna. "If you touch me," Jordan said, her voice low and dangerous, "or if you move my belongings, you will be facing federal assault charges. And you," she looked at Karenna, "are violating FAA regulations by coercing a passenger to move from an assigned seat based on discriminatory bias. Do you want to continue?" "Discrim?" Karenna sputtered. "How dare you? I am trying to maintain order." The cockpit door opened. Captain Robert Miller stepped out. He was a large man with silver hair and a look of perpetual exhaustion. He saw Preston and immediately smiled. "Preston, good to see you," the captain said, shaking his hand. Then he looked at Jordan. His smile faded. "What's the problem here?" Miller asked. "She won't move from 1A, Bob," Preston said, gesturing to Jordan like she was a stain on the carpet. "And she's threatening the crew." Captain Miller looked at Jordan. He didn't ask for her side of the story. He didn't ask to see her ticket. He saw a young black woman in a hoodie arguing with a wealthy white man in a suit. He made his choice. "Ma'am," Captain Miller said, his voice booming, "on my aircraft, the flight attendant's word is law. If Karenna needs you to move for operational reasons, you move. If you continue to cause a disturbance, I will have the LEOs, law enforcement officers, come down the jet bridge and drag you off. And you will be placed on the no-fly list. Is that what you want?" Jordan looked at the three of them. The captain, the flight attendant, the entitled passenger, a wall of arrogance. She realized then that logic wouldn't work. They were too blinded by their prejudice to see the reality in front of them. "Operational reasons," Jordan repeated. "So, moving me to give him my seat is an operational necessity?" "Passenger comfort is an operational priority," the captain said curtly. "Last chance. Move to 4D or get off the plane." Jordan took a deep breath. She stood up. Preston smirked. "Smart choice, girl." Jordan picked up her bag. But she didn't move to 4D. She stood in the aisle, looking Captain Miller in the eye. "I'll take 4D, she said. "But I want it noted on the record that I was coerced under threat of removal." "Noted," Miller said dismissively, waving his hand. "Just sit down." Jordan walked to the back of the first-class cabin and squeezed into seat 4D. It was right next to the galley, kitchen area. It was noisy, and the light from the prep area would shine in her face for the entire 7-hour flight. She watched as Preston settled into 1A, her seat. Karenna immediately brought him a glass of Dom Perignon, laughing at a joke he made. They clinked glasses. Jordan pulled out her phone. She had signal for a few more minutes. She opened her email app and composed a message. "To Board of Directors, Skyline Aviation, CC, HR Legal Compliance, Richard Sterling. Subject: Immediate Emergency Board Review, Flight 402. I am currently on board Flight 402. Activate Protocol 7 immediately upon our arrival in London. Have legal ready at the gate. Do not notify the crew. She hit send. As the plane taxied to the runway, Karenna walked by Jordan's seat. She leaned down, whispering so only Jordan could hear. Don't ever think you're one of us, Karenna sneered. Know your place. Jordan stared straight ahead. Oh, I know my place, she thought, and in about 7 hours, you're going to find out exactly where yours is. The engines roared, and the plane lifted into the sky. The seatbelt sign pinged off as Flight 402 leveled out at 35,000 feet over the Atlantic. For most in first class, this was the signal to recline their seats and await the start of the premium service. For Jordan Maxwell, jammed into seat 4D right next to the noisy galley, it was the beginning of a very long ordeal. From her vantage point, she had a perfect diagonal view of seat 1A. She watched as Karenna practically floated down the aisle, presenting Preston Holloway with a steaming hot towel on a silver tray. Karenna leaned in close, her voice a husky murmur as she took his drink order. Preston, already 2 glasses of champagne deep, was loud and expansive, his laughter grating against the quiet hum of the cabin. Jordan opened her laptop. The light from the galley was distracting, flickering every time a crew member moved past the curtain. She tried to focus on the profit and loss statements for Skyline's European division, but the environment was actively hostile. Nuts, Mr. Holloway? Warm macadamias? Karenna's voice drifted back. Keep 'em coming, darling. And another scotch. Neat. 20 minutes later, the meal service began. The aroma of roasted duck and truffle oil wafted through the cabin. Jordan, despite the stress, realized she was starving. She hadn't eaten since Tokyo. Karenna moved down the aisle with the meal cart, serving the window seats first. She spent a solid 5 minutes chatting with Preston about his recent trip to Tuscany as she laid out his gourmet dinner on white linen. Finally, she reached row 4. She didn't make eye contact with Jordan. Meal choice? Karenna asked the air above Jordan's head. What are the options? Jordan asked quietly. We have the roasted duck with truffle mash, or the miso-glazed black cod, Karenna recited robotically. I'll have the duck, please. Karenna stopped. She made a show of checking her tablet, tapping the screen with a manicured nail. She sighed loudly. Oh. Actually, we're out of the duck. Mr. Holloway got the last one. It's a very popular dish among our full-fare premium passengers. Jordan looked at the cart. She could see a foil container labeled duck right on top. It looks like there's one right there. Karenna snatched the container and shoved it to the back of the cart. That one is defective. Quality control issue. It's the cod or nothing. I'm allergic to cod, Jordan lied. She wasn't, but she wanted to see how far Karenna would push this. Karenna shrugged. Then I guess it's nothing. I can bring you some crackers from economy later if we have extras. She started to push the cart away. Wait, Jordan said. There must be a crew meal available. Or a vegetarian option. Karenna turned back, her expression one of pure venom. Look, you're lucky to even be up here. You don't get to make demands. You took a seat away from a paying customer, and now you want to complain about the food? You get what you get. She disappeared into the galley. 5 minutes later, a junior flight attendant, looking terrified, dropped a plastic tray onto Jordan's table. It held a cold, rubbery chicken sandwich wrapped in cellophane, the kind sold in vending machines, and a lukewarm bottle of water. Jordan stared at the sandwich. Across the aisle, Preston was loudly smacking his lips over his truffle duck. Jordan took a picture of the sandwich with her phone. Then she took a picture of Preston's feast. She added them to a digital folder titled Evidence. 3 hours into the flight, the cabin lights were dimmed for sleep. Captain Miller emerged from the cockpit to stretch his legs. He didn't check on his crew. He went straight to 1A. Jordan paused there, typing to listen. Everything to your liking, Preston? The captain asked, his voice booming in the quiet cabin. Top-notch as always, Bob, Preston mumbled sleepily. Except for the scenery earlier. He gestured vaguely toward the back of the cabin. Captain Miller chuckled. Apologies again for that. Sometimes the booking system lets riffraff slip through the cracks. We handled it. She's stuck by the toilets now. Won't bother you again. Good man, Bob. I'll mention your professionalism to the current CEO when I see him at the shareholders meeting next month. Maybe get you off these red eyes. I'd appreciate that, Preston. Jordan felt a cold chill that had nothing to do with the cabin temperature. The current CEO, she thought. You mean the man who cleaned out his desk yesterday morning? They had no idea. The bubble of arrogance they lived in was impenetrable. They genuinely believed the world worked this way, that wealth and race dictated worth, and that they were the gatekeepers. With 2 hours left in the flight, Jordan needed to use the restroom. She got up quietly. As she passed the galley curtain, she heard Karenna talking to the other flight attendant. Can't believe she had the nerve. Probably stole that ticket. People like her always try to game the system. I made sure her coffee was decaf earlier. Let her be groggy when we land. Jordan stopped. She had drunk 2 cups of that coffee, desperate to stay awake to finish her report. She felt the exhaustion pulling at her now. She walked into the lavatory and splashed cold water on her face. She looked at herself in the mirror, the tired eyes, the messy hair, the cheap hoodie. Let them see what they want to see, she whispered to her reflection. It makes the reveal so much sweeter. When she returned to her seat, she found her laptop closed. She had left it open to a complex spreadsheet. She opened it. The screen was dark. She pressed the power button. Nothing. She noticed a damp patch on the carpet beneath her seat bag. She pressed the call button. Karenna arrived instantly, looking annoyed. What now? Did someone touch my laptop? It was open, and now it won't turn on. And the floor is wet. Karenna sniffed. We hit some clear air turbulence while you were in the bathroom. A water bottle must have fallen off the cart. Accidents happen. Maybe you should have secured your valuables. Turbulence? Jordan asked skeptically. I didn't feel anything. Well, you aren't a trained aviation professional, are you? It happens. Karenna turned on her heel. We'll be landing in 90 minutes. Prepare your cabin for arrival. Jordan knew it was a lie. There had been no turbulence. Karenna had deliberately sabotaged her computer. Fortunately, everything was saved on the cloud. But the malice of the act was staggering. Jordan put the dead laptop away. She didn't need it anymore. The file was complete. She closed her eyes and let the exhaustion take her, enduring the bumpy descent into London Heathrow while the smell of Preston Holloway's freshly brewed espresso taunted her. The wheels of the Boeing 777 touched down on the tarmac at Heathrow with a shuddering jolt that woke Jordan from an uneasy doze. Outside, the London sky was a uniform sheet of gray, weeping a steady drizzle. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to London Heathrow. Captain Miller's voice crackled over the intercom, sounding refreshed and jovial. The local time is 7:45 a.m. We know you have a choice in air travel, and we thank you for choosing Skyline. The plane began its long taxi toward Terminal 5. In first class, the usual rustle of activity began businessmen snapping shut briefcases, checking Rolexes, anxious to be the first off. Preston Holloway was already standing, stretching his back, ignoring the seatbelt sign that was still illuminated. Karenna was right there, helping him on with his cashmere coat, giggling as she brushed imaginary lint from his shoulder. Don't forget your duty-free, Mr. Holloway, she cooed. Jordan remained seated in 4D, her backpack already on her lap. She felt the vibration of her phone turning back on as it connected to the UK network. Ding, ding, ding. 3 text messages arrived in rapid succession, all from Richard Sterling. 1. Protocol 7, active. Board is assembled via secure video link. 2. Legal team is on site at the arrival gate. 3. I'm here too, waiting for your signal. A grim smile touched Jordan's lips. The trap was set. The plane turned, but instead of heading toward the main terminal piers where the jet bridges were waiting, it veered left, heading toward a remote section of the tarmac, usually reserved for cargo planes or aircraft requiring maintenance. A murmur went through the first-class cabin. Frequent flyers knew this wasn't normal. Preston leaned over Karenna. Darling, why are we parking out in Siberia? I have a driver waiting. Karenna looked confused. She peered out the window. I'm not sure, Mr. Holloway. The captain hasn't informed us of a gate change. The plane rolled to a stop in the middle of the vast, wet concrete expanse. The engines whined down. The intercom clicked on. Captain Miller's voice was tight now, the jovial tone gone. Folks, this is the captain. Tower has directed us to a remote stand for a routine security protocol. Customs and immigration officials will be boarding the aircraft shortly to conduct a spot check before we are cleared to deplane and take buses to the terminal. We ask for your patience. Please remain seated with your seatbelts fastened." "Unbelievable," Preston shouted, slamming his hand onto the overhead bin. "I don't have time for this. Karenna, get the captain down here. Tell them who I am. I'm not waiting for customs on the damn plane." "I'll see what I can do, sir," Karenna said, looking flustered. She hurried toward the cockpit. Jordan looked out her window. Through the rain-streaked glass, she saw the approach. It wasn't just a standard stairs truck. A convoy of 3 black SUVs, followed by 2 airport police vehicles with lights flashing silently, pulled up to the side of the aircraft. A mobile stair unit drew up to the forward door 1 liter. Karenna emerged from the cockpit, looking pale. The captain says, "We have to wait. Authorities are boarding. He doesn't know what it's about." She glared at Jordan. Probably some passenger has an outstanding warrant. The implication was clear. It was Jordan's fault. The cabin door opened with a mechanical whine, letting in the damp, cold London air. Preston stood in the aisle, blocking the way. Finally, "Officer, I'm Preston Holloway. I need to disembark immediately. You can deal with the riffraff after I leave." 4 people stepped onto the plane. They were not normal customs officers. 2 were men in sharp, dark suits with earpieces, corporate security. 1 was a stern-faced woman holding a tablet legal counsel. The 4th person was Richard Sterling. The man Preston thought was still CEO. Preston's jaw dropped. "Richard? What in God's name are you doing here? Did you come to personally escort me off? That's a nice touch." Richard Sterling, a distinguished man in his 60s with silver hair and an impeccably tailored suit, did not smile. He looked past Preston, scanning the cabin. Karenna rushed forward, her customer service smile back in place, though shaky. "Mr. Sterling, what an unexpected honor. Can I get you a coffee while you wait for whoever you are looking for?" Richard ignored her completely. His eyes locked onto the back of the cabin. "Excuse me," Richard said, pushing past Preston Holloway as if he were a cumbersome piece of luggage. "Hey," Preston sputtered. "Richard, what is the meaning of this?" Richard walked straight down the aisle, past the stunned faces of the first-class passengers, past the galley. He stopped at row 4. He looked down at the woman in the cheap gray hoodie and worn-out sneakers. Karenna, following close behind, whispered frantically, "Mr. Sterling, please don't concern yourself with her. She's been a troublemaker the whole flight. We were just about to have security remove her." Richard slowly turned his head and looked at Karenna. The look was so freezing, so utterly devoid of warmth, that Karenna actually took a step back, her mouth snapping shut. Richard turned back to Jordan. He bowed his head, a genuine, deep mark of respect. "Miss Maxwell," Richard said, his voice clear in the silent cabin. "Welcome to London. On behalf of the entire transition team, I apologize for the delay in your extraction." Jordan unbuckled her seatbelt. She stood up, stretching her stiff muscles. She picked up her backpack. "It's fine, Richard," Jordan said, her rasp gone, her voice commanding the space. "It gave me time to finalize my observations." Karenna stared. Preston gaped. "Miss Maxwell?" Karenna whispered, the blood draining from her face. Jordan stepped out into the aisle. She didn't look at Karenna. She looked toward the front of the plane, where Captain Miller had just emerged from the cockpit to see what the commotion was about. "Shall we?" Jordan said to Richard. "After you, Chairwoman," Richard said, stepping aside and gesturing toward the door. The silence in the cabin was absolute. It was a silence heavier than the plane itself, a silence born of sudden, terrifying realization. As Jordan began to walk up the aisle, she stopped next to Preston Holloway, who was still frozen, his mouth slightly agape. She looked him up and down, mimicking the exact disdainful scan he had given her at JFK. "By the way, Preston," Jordan said calmly, "I bought Aether Holdings yesterday morning. I own this airplane. I own this airline. And that seat you're standing in? That's my seat." She continued walking, leaving a statue behind her. She paused at the cabin door, turning to the lead security officer. "Do not let the flight crew or Mr. Holloway disembark," she ordered. "Bring them to the secure conference room in Hangar 3. We have a debriefing. And tell Captain Miller to bring his flight log." She stepped out into the cold rain, Richard at her heel, leaving chaos in her wake. The The conference room in Hangar 3 was a glass-walled cage suspended above the hangar floor, overlooking the skeletal frames of aircraft engines being stripped for maintenance. The room was soundproof, cold, and smelled faintly of ozone and expensive leather. Jordan sat at the head of a long, polished mahogany table. She hadn't changed clothes. She was still wearing the gray hoodie and the scuffed sneakers, but the dynamic in the room had shifted so violently that she might as well have been wearing royal robes. To her right sat Richard Sterling. To her left, the head of Skyline's legal counsel, a woman named Veronica Sharp, whose reputation for dismantling careers was legendary. On the other side of the table sat the accused: Captain Robert Miller, Flight Attendant Karenna, and Preston Holloway. A large monitor on the wall flickered to life. The face of Gary, the JFK supervisor, appeared via video link. He looked sweaty and disheveled, clearly pulled out of a break room or his home. "Is everyone present?" Jordan asked. Her voice was quiet, but it echoed in the silence of the room. "Yes, Chairwoman," Veronica Sharp said, opening a thick binder. Preston Holloway couldn't take it anymore. He slammed his hand on the table. "This is kidnapping. I am a platinum key holder. I demand to speak to my lawyer. You can't hold me here just because you bought the company. I have rights." Jordan turned her gaze to him. She didn't blink. "You are free to leave at any time, Mr. Holloway. The door is unlocked. However, if you walk out that door before we are finished, the merger between Aether Holdings and your firm, Holloway Capital, will be terminated immediately. I believe you have about $200 million of debt riding on that deal closing next week." Preston's face went slack. The blood drained from his cheeks. He sank back into his chair, suddenly looking very small in his expensive coat. "I didn't know," Preston stammered. "It was just banter, just travel stress." "We'll get to you," Jordan said. She turned her attention to the crew. Captain Miller sat with his arms crossed, trying to maintain an air of authority. "Miss Maxwell, with all due respect, I am the captain of the vessel. I have the authority to manage the cabin as I see fit. If I moved you, it was for the safety and comfort of the passengers. My record is spotless for 30 years. "Spotless," Jordan repeated. She nodded to Veronica. Veronica tapped a key on her laptop. The screen on the wall changed. It showed security footage from JFK check-in. It showed Gary sneering. It showed the moment the chairman's circle status flashed on the screen, and Gary's subsequent refusal to follow protocol. Then, the screen changed to an audio waveform. "She looks like she's here to clean the bathrooms, not fly." Preston's voice. "Get this trash out of my sight." "Preston, don't ever think you're one of us. Know your place." Karenna's voice, recorded on the plane. Karenna gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "You recorded us?" "I record everything when I conduct a stress test on a new asset," Jordan said. "But let's talk about the operational reasons for moving me from Seat 1A. Jordan slid a piece of paper across the table. It was the passenger manifest. Seat 1A was assigned to me. It was paid for by the corporation. Mr. Holloway was assigned Seat 1A on a different flight that was canceled, and he was moved to this flight on standby. He was supposed to be in 4D. You, Captain Miller, overrode the system manually to put him in my seat." "Why?" Miller shifted in his chair. "Mr. Holloway is a known VIP. You were an unknown, an anomaly. It is standard practice to prioritize high-value clients." "So, a black woman in a hoodie cannot be a high-value client?" Jordan asked. The question hung in the air like a guillotine blade. Miller didn't answer. He couldn't. "And you, Karenna," Jordan continued, turning to the flight attendant who was now trembling. "You told me the duck was unavailable. You served me a crew sandwich. You claimed turbulence caused a water spill on my laptop." Jordan projected the flight data telemetry onto the screen. "This is the accelerometer data for the entire flight," Jordan said, pointing to a flat, green line. "Zero turbulence, smooth air the entire way. You poured water on my computer deliberately." Karenna burst into tears. I was trying to protect the brand. You didn't look like you belonged. We get scammers all the time. I thought I was doing the right thing." "You judged me based on my appearance," Jordan said, her voice rising slightly. "You decided that because I didn't wear a suit, because I didn't carry a Louis Vuitton bag, and because of the color of my skin, that I was lesser, that I was trash. And you treated me as such." She looked at the screen where Gary was watching, terrified. Gary, at JFK, you threatened to call security on a Chairman's Circle member because you assumed I was a fraud. You delayed my boarding. You humiliated me in front of other passengers. Gary's voice crackled over the speaker. Miss Maxwell, please. I have a family. It was a mistake. I see that now. It wasn't a mistake, Jordan said firmly. A mistake is a typo. A mistake is a wrong turn. This was a choice. You chose arrogance over service. You chose prejudice over protocol. And now, you are going to face the reality of those choices. She stood up. The room felt suffocated by her presence. Richard, read the verdict. The silence in the glass-walled conference room of Hangar 3 was heavy, a physical weight pressing down on everyone present. Outside, the rain lashed against the soundproof glass, blurring the world into gray streaks. But inside, the air was still and cold. Richard Sterling stood up slowly. He didn't look like a man who had just rushed to the airport. He looked like a judge preparing to pass a sentence that had been inevitable from the moment the plane doors closed in New York. He adjusted his silver-rimmed glasses, opened a leather-bound folio, and smoothed the paper inside with a terrifying calmness. The review is complete, Richard announced. His voice wasn't loud, yet it seemed to bounce off the walls, trapping the 4 accused in the center of the room. We have analyzed the cockpit voice recordings, the cabin surveillance logs, the check-in security footage, and the flight telemetry data. The verdict from the board of directors and the new owner of Skyline Aviation is final. There will be no appeals. He turned his attention first to the large monitor on the wall. Gary Thompson, Station Manager, JFK Terminal 4. Gary's face on the screen was pale, sweating under the fluorescent lights of the break room he was hiding in. He tried to speak. Mr. Sterling, please, if I could just explain. There is nothing to explain, Mr. Thompson. Richard cut him off, his voice slicing through the static. You profiled a Chairman's Circle member based on appearance. You ignored a verified system override because of personal bias. But worst of all, you weaponized airport security protocols to intimidate a paying customer. Richard looked at Veronica, the legal counsel. She nodded and spoke toward the microphone. Mr. Thompson, effective immediately, your employment with Skyline Aviation is terminated for cause. This falls under gross negligence and discriminatory harassment. Gary slumped. Okay, I get it. I'll pack my things. You aren't finished listening, Veronica added sharply. Because you utilized a federal threat calling security on a legitimate passenger without cause, Skyline is legally obligated to file a formal incident report with the TSA and the Department of Homeland Security. This report will trigger a review of your security clearance. Gary's eyes went wide. Wait. What does that mean? It means your SITA badge, your airport security access, is revoked, Veronica said simply. You won't just be leaving Skyline, Gary. You are effectively barred from working at any airport in the United States, in any capacity, from baggage handling to concessions. Your career in aviation is over. Security is escorting you out of the building as we speak. The screen went black abruptly, cutting off Gary's desperate plea. The room fell deadly silent. Captain Miller shifted in his chair, his face a mask of red-hot indignation. He was a senior pilot, a captain of the fleet. Surely he was untouchable. Richard turned to him. Captain Robert Miller. Now listen here, Sterling, Miller barked, finding his voice. I have 30 years of service. I have a union rep on speed dial. You can't touch a captain for managing his cabin. I made a command decision. You made a fraudulent decision, Richard corrected, sliding a printed log across the mahogany table. We checked the flight logs, Bob. You entered a code for operational necessity to move Miss Maxwell, but you didn't file the corresponding incident report because there was no incident. You falsified a federal flight document to do a favor for your drinking buddy. Miller froze. Falsifying logs was the one sin the FAA did not forgive. You are being forced into immediate, involuntary early retirement, Richard said, his voice dropping an octave. Effective today. You will surrender your wings and your ID before you leave this room. You can't do that, Miller whispered. My pension. Your pension is under review, Richard said coldly. The board is arguing that your actions constitute conduct detrimental to the company. If that holds up, and our lawyers will ensure it does, your payout will be reduced to the statutory minimum. You'll be lucky if you can afford a bus ticket, let alone a first-class seat, for the rest of your life. Miller seemed to shrink into his uniform. The arrogance that had filled the cockpit was gone, replaced by the crushing reality of a ruined legacy. Next, Richard turned his eyes to Karenna. The flight attendant was shaking, tears streaming down her face, ruining the perfect makeup she had applied hours ago. She looked at Jordan, pleading with her eyes. "Miss Maxwell, please," Karenna sobbed. "I'm a single mother. I have a mortgage. I was just doing what I thought was right. I was trying to protect the premium experience. I didn't know it was you." Jordan finally spoke. She didn't raise her voice. "That is exactly the problem, Karenna. You treated me like garbage because you didn't know I had power. If I had been a nobody, you would have been perfectly happy to let me starve and sit in the dark. You don't serve people, you serve status, and that is dangerous." Richard picked up the thread. "Karenna Davis, you are terminated immediately for destruction of passenger property and willful neglect. You are also placed on the industry-wide Do Not Hire blacklist." "No," Karenna wailed, putting her head in her hands. "Furthermore," Richard continued, "accounting has already processed a deduction from your final severance check. We are billing you $4,500 for the replacement of Miss Maxwell's laptop, which you destroyed with water. You'll receive the receipt in the mail." Finally, there was only one person left. Preston Holloway. The venture capitalist sat frozen. He wasn't crying, he was calculating. He was a shark, and he was trying to find an angle. He stood up, smoothing his cashmere coat, trying to regain his height and dominance. "Look, this is all very dramatic," Preston said, forcing a chuckle that sounded like dry leaves crunching. "You fired the help. Bravo. You made your point, Jordan. But let's be adults. We have a $4.2 billion merger to sign next week. Aether Holdings needs Holloway capital. You can't let a bad flight ruin a deal of that magnitude. My board would sue you for breach of good faith." Jordan stood up. She walked slowly around the table until she was standing inches from Preston. She looked up at him, her expression unreadable. "You think this is about feelings, Preston?" Jordan asked. "You think I'm canceling the deal because you were mean to me? Well, aren't you?" Preston sneered. "It's emotional. It's petty. It's due diligence," Jordan said softly. She nodded to Veronica. The lawyer tapped a key, and the screen changed. It wasn't a video this time. It was a spreadsheet, a long, complex list of travel expenses. "When I decided to buy your company, Preston, I audited everything, including your personal spending," Jordan said. "See this? For the last 5 years, you have been booking full-fare first-class tickets on Skyline, expensing them to your company, and then using a friends and family discount code you got from a former Skyline executive to pocket the difference. You've been skimming off the top of your own firm." Preston's face went gray. "That's an accounting error." "It's embezzlement," Jordan corrected. "And it's fraud. I can't merge with a company led by a fraudster. The liability is too high." She leaned in close. "The deal is dead, Preston. Aether Holdings is officially withdrawing its offer. I sent the letter to your board of directors 10 minutes ago, along with this spreadsheet." Preston staggered back, hitting the table. "You told my board? They are convening an emergency meeting in an hour," Jordan said, checking her watch. "I imagine you're about to be voted out as CEO. You're done." "And one last thing," Veronica interjected, holding up a plastic card, Preston's platinum key card. "This status is revoked. You are banned for life from Skyline Aviation. If you try to book a ticket, the system will auto-reject you. You are no longer welcome in the sky." Preston looked around the room. He looked at the broken captain, the sobbing flight attendant, and the blank screen where Gary used to be. He realized, with a terrifying clarity, that he was entirely alone. "You can't do this," Preston hissed, his voice shaking with rage. "Do you know who I am?" "I am Preston Holloway." Jordan walked to the door and held it open. She looked him up and down, mimicking the exact look of disgust he had given her at JFK. "I know exactly who you are," Jordan said. "You're a passenger with no ticket. You're a CEO with no company. And you're a man with no character." She pointed down the hallway. "You're a nobody, Preston. Now get out of my hangar." 2 large security guards stepped forward. They didn't offer to carry his bags. They simply grabbed Preston by the arms, ignoring his shouts of, "I'll sue you, I'll destroy you," and dragged him out of the room. Captain Miller and Karenna followed, heads bowed, shuffling out into the cold, unforgiving reality of the public exit. They would have to wait on the curb, in the rain, for a standard taxi. When the heavy door clicked shut, the silence returned to the room. But this time, it was peaceful. Jordan exhaled a long breath, her shoulders dropping. She looked at Richard. "Was that too much?" she asked, the rasp returning to her tired voice. Richard smiled, closing the folio. They treated a human being like garbage because they thought no one was watching. They thought they were gods in their little metal tube. You just reminded them that they are mortal. You didn't just fire them, Jordan. You rebalanced the scales. Jordan walked to the glass wall and looked down. Below, on the vast concrete floor of the hangar, the maintenance crew was working. Mechanics in grease-stained jumpsuits were taking apart a turbine engine. They were focused, diligent, and skilled. They were the ones who actually kept the airline running. Yet they entered through the back door and never got champagne. Jordan turned to Richard. "Richard, I want you to order pizza. The good stuff, from the place in the city, for the entire night shift maintenance crew." "Done," Richard said. "And Richard?" "Yes, Chairwoman? Give everyone on the hangar floor a 10% bonus this month. And put a note on their pay stubs." Jordan smiled, a genuine, warm expression that lit up her tired face. "Tell them it's from the lady in seat 1A. Tell them it's for treating the planes with more respect than the crew treated the passengers." Jordan zipped up her faded gray hoodie, hoisted her backpack over one shoulder, and walked toward the exit. She had a company to run, a culture to fix, and a billion-dollar mess to clean up. But for the first time in a long time, she knew that at Skyline Aviation, nobody, absolutely nobody, would ever be treated like a nobody again. Jordan Maxwell didn't need a suit or a first-class ticket to prove her worth. She owned the whole airline. But the crew of Flight 402 and Preston Holloway learned the hard way that character is revealed not by how you treat the people you need, but by how you treat the people you think you don't. They saw a hoodie and saw a nobody. Jordan saw their prejudice and showed them the door. In a world obsessed with status, this story serves as a brutal reminder. Be kind to everyone, because you never know who is signing your paycheck or who holds the power to ground you permanently. Karma doesn't always come instantly, but when it arrives, it often flies first class. If you enjoyed this story of justice served cold, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel. Don't forget to share this video with someone who needs a reminder to be humble, and subscribe for more stories of karma, revenge, and real-life drama. See you in the next video.